Does anyone hear about it? Saying that it's working?
Yeah.
Yes, we heard it.
Okay, let's start it. I'll fix my camera later on. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Seems like there's no. Can
We can
you
hear
hear me?
you.
I cannot hear people.
Oh, you cannot hear us?
Um,
Everyone, can you hear us?
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Can you hear
Um,
me?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. It was my mic. Hello, everyone. Tonight we
Hello.
have the pleasure to have a book that the parents will be very, very and happy to be learning this technique right now. But those who still have time to adjust, they will be very, very happy to be part of this presentation. And I don't want to stay on too long. And I will let Cheryl to start the emotional intelligent parenting by Maurice, Elias, Steve, and Tobias. So, Cheryl, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll just get started really quickly. Didn't mean to do that. Okay. So Emotionally Intelligent Parenting. It's a book by Maurice J. Elias, Stephen E. Tobias, and Brian S. Freelander. Presentation by me. So these are the three individuals. I'll just flip back and forth really quickly. The most important detail you need to take away from these three individuals is that their background is purely psychology and child welfare. There's no finance, there's no like self help, anything like that. These are professors at universities that study the child development, right? Study child psychology and they study education, right? So they came together. They're like, let's write a book to to help parents help their kids, right? So just pictures of each of them, right? Maurice Elias, Stephen Tobias, and Brian S. Freelander. I believe they're all still alive and they are all still active professors, though it's been about 25-ish years since they wrote the book. Okay, so I'm just going to go chapter by chapter really quickly, a brief summary, and a couple important ideas from each of the chapters that I liked. I'm not covering everything, so there will be like, ideas that you may have liked from the book that I won't cover because there were a lot of really good ideas in the book, right? So first is the 24 karat golden rule, right? So we all know the golden rule, which is do unto others how you want them to do unto you, right? However, the 24 karat golden rule is basically do unto your children how you would have other people do unto your children, right? So that level of like patience and understanding that you'd hope strangers would have when interacting with your children, the authors say, okay, take that as your starting ground whenever you interact with your children, right? So then they start talking about this idea of emotional intelligence. And they basically point out just a couple ideas to think about. And they don't define it as like a single line, but they just give you ideas to think about. First is how your own feelings, being aware of your own feelings and the feelings of others, right? Other people have feelings and that influences their actions, right? You need to show empathy, understand others' points of view, because their points of view are going to be different from yours, and that shapes their actions and their emotions, right? You need to regulate and cope positively with emotional and behavioral impulses, right? There are so many things that will throw us off throughout our lives, and we need to be aware of those things so that we can properly react to them so that they won't throw us off long term, right? Be positive, goal and plan oriented, right? When you have a goal in mind, it's easier to get back on track whenever those impulses knock you off track, right? And then the last one is use positive social skills in handling relationship, right? You don't want hostility constantly in your interactions with other because that'll cause them to be less receptive to your ideas, and which may deteriorate your relationship. Remember, these ideas also tie into the parent's relationship with the child, right? Because the authors really push this idea of like a positive relationship between parent and child. So going into chapter 2, right, creating a problem-solving family, right? So basically, the first idea they bring into the chapter is this idea of like family mission statements, and that one is like they bring up this idea of like a family constitution, right, where it's like what is the thing that your family does? Is your family like shared? Does your family volunteer? Does your family help others? Does your family push to improve themselves? Right? What is the thing that your family does as like a mission statement or a goal to help drive your family's actions? And then they also bring on this idea of like pushing the book's ideas onto kids, right? Because throughout the book, it's noted that like the receptiveness of ideas by kids is less and less as they get older, right? Because over time the kids shape their own worldview, and they're going to be less receptive to the idea the parent all of a sudden changing how they've done things for like the past 10 years, right? So the book also talks about how to like propose the ideas. Don't try to heavy hand, we need to do everything in the book, but rather make small minor changes over time so that you can then get those long-term gains by incrementing over time, right? And then the authors bring up some roadmaps and some ideas that help in basically becoming a problem solving family, right? There was about like 20 of them. I just listed 4 of them that I liked, which is the first one is stop and set boundaries, right? A parent's job is to know when to say no and when to say yes, right? And by properly setting boundaries, those no's and those yeses are predefined early on. And the next one is reduce speed, right? So basically, oftentimes in life, we have a lot of things thrown at us. And if there's too much to handle, children, especially under the age of like 12, they won't be able to like properly time manage, right? So it's the parent's job to basically refocus what things they're going to do. Okay, maybe we won't be able to do this activity. Maybe we'll do this activity. And over time, you increase the load on the child as they get older. Next is information ahead. And this one's basically always be trying to learn new techniques to make your family dynamic work better, especially if there are things that don't work in the past that you want to improve on. And then the fourth one is basically the toll plaza, where it's this idea that the household requires a bunch of activities to function, right? There's people need to go to work, people need to go to school, the house needs to be maintained, certain things need to be clean, right? All of these different things contribute towards a household. And even if a child is not working and monetarily contributing, right, they can contribute to the welfare of the household, right? And then the last big idea that they talk about is basically humor is important, right? You need vitamins for positive action because humor is how we break down barriers between people more easily. It's one of the best ways to break down barriers. So, chapter 3 actually has a pretty clear outline, and I from the start, I just took that outline and I followed it, right? So first is the their guiding principles on EQ. The first one is modeling, right? You give examples that are good for the child to follow, and you try not to act on things you wouldn't want your child to do. Then there's prompting and cueing previously learned skills, right? If a child does something that you think is a good behavior, you should compliment that, or you should try to reinforce that behavior through reward, right? The next is paraphrasing, right? Sometimes the world is a really complicated place and you need to explain those concepts to the child, and that's what paraphrasing is. Next is open-ended questioning. That's basically you give the child time to think about how they feel about various information that you provide them, right? And there's no bad answers that the child can give. You just need to ask open-ended questions. And if you're concerned about an answer they give, follow it up with another question. The two question rule is basically try to have your questions be straightforward as possible and don't barrage them with a rapid series of questions when you're trying to get that open-ended questioning so that the child has time to think, or because if you give them too much then they will stop thinking altogether, right? There's the Columbo technique, which is about like basically you do it in a non-confrontational way, right? Columbo was a detective. I think it's a show, and basically this detective gets all the information he needs by asking like very casual questions and picking up on light cues, right? Instead of going straight at the like being very confrontational and asking direct. Because if you ask direct and the person may not want to give that information, then you won't get that information. And now they're less receptive to future questions. Then the next one is the questioning techniques. And first they talk about patience and persistence, right? Sometimes you're not going to get the answer that you think is a good answer, even if you ask multiple times over multiple days, but you're going to be with the kid for 2+ decades, right? So you need to just take your time, right? Nothing happens instantaneously, nothing changes immediately. You got to take your time with it. Flexibility and creativity, right? Here you need to ask questions that are not immediately obvious what you're trying to get at, or immediately obvious what the kid should answer with, right? Because if the answer is immediately obvious, the kid might not give an answer that is true to themselves when they're being questioned about how they feel, about the events that happened recently, things like that, right? Because sometimes they'll just give the answer to end the conversation instead of giving the answer that they feel is right. And then lastly is developmental adaptation. This is basically the idea that you need to change the questions you ask over the course of like the child's lifetime. And sometimes questions that would have worked in the past don't work anymore, or questions that wouldn't have worked in the past now are effective ideas you should go on. So then the next one is their approach to discipline, right? And basically they try to emphasize reinforcing positive behavior instead of trying to actively punish negative behavior, right? They also talk about how the child needs feedback and the child needs to gain self-awareness of their actions, right? And one of the best ways to gain self-awareness is to set a goal, give it a time frame, and then have a scoring system. Basically, have a way of measuring how well the success is and tie in a reward to that. Additionally, they tie in this idea that stuff happens, right? Sometimes you will do everything right and it will not work out. Both the parent and the child needs to understand this, right? Sometimes they'll study the way they plan to and it was a good studying plan, but they still got a bad grade. And you don't let that stop, right? You just got to keep going. And then the last big idea from this chapter I really liked was chill out, right? So basically, chill out is whenever a conversation gets really confrontational or people start yelling, you basically just stop the conversation and you say, okay, let's split up for a bit, like 2 to 10 minutes, clear our thoughts, think about what we want to say, think about questions we want to ask, and then come back to it, right? Because if you get caught up in the moment, then you basically stop asking the good questions and you start arguing. And there's also this idea that sometimes you're going to need to chill out multiple times, right? Like you argue and then you go chill out and then you come back and then you're talking and then you start arguing again and then you need to chill out again, right? So you need to be able and willing to repeat the chill out phase, right? So the fifth chapter basically talks about becoming less impulsive and having more control. And they give some just like example techniques that you can use, like feeling charades, where they basically look at pictures of different people feeling different emotions. This is meant for younger children. And you talk about what these emotions could be and what could cause a person to feel those emotions. The next idea is storefronts, basically where this was written in the early 2000s, so malls were a lot more popular back then. And there is the idea that you go walk through a mall and you look at the different storefronts and you see what do you think about the store. When you look at just the storefront, what kind of emotions that bring out to you? What do you think this store represents, right? And they also tie this idea to like people, like how this person presents themselves. What does that make you think about them? And then the next one is feelings on TV, right? The way different characters act. What makes you? How does that make you feel? What kind of behavior do you think that's supposed to elicit? And they recommend both shows you approve of and shows you disapprove of, right? Shows you approve of to like positively reinforce the good behavior, and shows you disapprove of to basically ask questions and try to figure out to the child, right? Why do we not want this behavior to happen, right? The next one is basically keep calm activities where they list, if they're upset, right, they'll list out their emotions, they'll list out what is causing them to feel this emotion. And they give some good sheets in the book about the keep calm activities. The next one is best, and best is basically a way of like communicating with others, right? Have good body posture, maintain eye contact, speak clearly, and have a good, firm tone of voice, or a tone of voice that fits the kind of conversation you're trying to have. And then the last big idea I liked from this chapter was this idea of trouble trackers. And trouble trackers is basically the keep calm activities, but for all age groups, right? The keep calm activities were really meant for like younger kids, but the trouble trackers are for like all age groups, where it's like, what caused the trouble in the situation? And you answer a bunch of questions about the situation to figure out how to prevent the situation, or how to calm yourself down, how to control your emotion in the situation. So chapter 6 is Fig Tespin. Uh, I don't know if they should have made this an abbreviation, but I do think it's a good like list of things, right? So first, your feelings cue you to thoughtful action, right? So if you're upset, you know, okay, I need to start. That ties you into the next step, right? Since you're upset, you now know I have a problem. Okay, so you have a problem, right? But you have a goal that you set previously, right? So now that goal, now you know, okay, I have a problem, I have this goal. How are they conflicting, right? So you think of things you can do to stop the problem and get back on focus with your goal, right? And now that you've done that, you're envisioning ways, envision outcomes, you're envisioning ways of getting back on track to your goal, right? You might list out with the child, okay, what are the different solutions we could have to this problem, right? And oftentimes you want the child to come up with five, 6 solutions, and don't say no immediately to the solution. If they have a bad solution, let them think of more solutions, and then you select the best solution, right? And once you've selected your solution, you plan to implement that solution. And now that you've implemented the solution, you go back. Now what? Okay, did your solution work? Do you still have that problem? Do you still feel those feelings, right? And this is basically, okay, you go through the steps so that you can solve emotional conflicts, right? Because again, a lot of the conflicts in this book, they're the basis of them is impulsive action caused by emotion in children, right? They're not rational, completely rational actors. So the solution isn't immediately just, oh, here's the solution, you need to implement it and that'll solve the problem, right? You need to go through the emotions, because if you ignore the emotions in solving the problem, the emotions will throw you off of solving that problem. So 7 is education related problems and choices, right? So they basically talk about how like transitions between schools can cause difficulties, and you need to encourage the expression of feelings. And this actually reminded me of a statistic I learned a couple of years ago, where Spring ISD is the district I went to elementary, middle school, and high school in. And a problem that all high schools throughout the country have is that oftentimes when people drop out, the biggest like collection of people dropping out is actually freshman year, followed by senior year, right? And part of the reason it's so difficult is that the transition between middle school and high school is a very harsh transition for kids, right? And it's harsh enough of a transition that Spring ISD used to have early high school centers where basically freshman students or ninth grade students were isolated from the rest of the high school body to give them proper transition time. And they dropped that program for a bit. However, within like the past 10-ish years, they've fully brought it back to all of their high schools because they see that as like that important of a thing, right? Is like the transition between schools can cause a lot of difficulty, right? So you need to encourage the expression of feelings so that they can talk through their problems to come up with better solutions for them, right? And then they also talk about how homework is often a source of conflict for all families, right? And some of the ways you can solve that source of conflict or contribute to reducing the conflict is creating a good study environment, finding a good way to monitor the assignment so that you can be on top of it as well as the child, especially if they have a lot of extracurriculars to handle, and to make sure that the work is done in order, right? Sometimes kids won't they'll be doing the homework, but they won't prioritize the homework, right? They'll choose to do an assignment that's due a week from now, even though they might have an assignment due tomorrow, right? You need to help in prioritizing assignments and prioritizing what activities you want to do. And then the last chapter I decided to cover was chapter 8. And basically, they talked about how you need to reach out in different ways and come up with different things to talk about and different things you can do at different points in the educational experience, right? So often early preschool, early elementary, right? You want to have those bedtime chats. You want to talk through like apologizing, spending time reading with the child, right? Early childhood reading is always incredibly important. Then moving into late elementary, early middle school, right? That's where like friendship dynamics become a lot harsher. You need to talk through them about like, okay, why do you not like this person? Why does this person not like you? Why do you have conflict with this person, right? And a really important idea to remember that the book also emphasizes that not everyone is going to get along and not everyone has to get along. But as long as there isn't conflict, that's good, right? And then the last section they talk about is basically middle school and early high school. And some of the ideas they like try to emphasize is this idea of like community service and working with others through extracurriculars to help that emotional regulation and to help basically keep them on track, right? Another like idea I wanted to bring up is that in Chicago, right, they always had a problem historically with gang violence, and one of the best ways they found to reduce that was to have extracurricular activities at schools, right? Because if they're busy after school, if they're doing something after school that they feel is good and that the parents feel is good, they're less likely to fall into the traps that may cause even further conflicts, that may cause them to associate with people that then cause more conflicts at home. So, chapter 9 was just an example chapter of basically all the techniques being used. So, I close my presentation here and I open the floor to everyone talking. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Great job.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. And I hope that those who are still in the queue to have kids, they will find this book very, very interesting. Even though the emotional awareness is difficult for African men, since we are raised without, they don't allow us to express our emotion, it's very, very important to take this one into consideration. So my question will be for everyone that if you want to take your 3 or 5 minutes, no, 3 minutes, please try to answer this question if you can. Is My question is, among all these techniques, what technique have you feel like you use, or what technique you feel like or you missed out, maybe because your kid are already adult, almost adult, and you feel like you miss out. So think about that, and let the floor open for anyone who wants to jump in.
Okay. Thomas.
I was writing.
Well, I can jump in quickly. First, I want to thank Shreya for the great presentation. Every time you are presenting, it feels like a lecture and a professor presenting. So that was great detail and development for us. Um, well, I will go straight by answering Arun's question. What technique I miss out? Um,
Or which one you use, or which one you like.
Well, I know I like the last. Uh, can you bring back chapter 18, chapter 8, Shira? Um, when they talk about each level of development. I know with Shrell, I had that child. Yeah, with Shrell, I had time to have that parent child chat time, bedtime. We did that a lot because we had just moved here to US. I wasn't working, and I had time to stay with, like, spend time with him. We used to go to the library to get book and all of that. But I think I missed part of it with Beyond because as Beyond started growing, I went to school and I didn't have enough bedtime reading time with Shirel, with Beyond. Um, so the reading part, that's I miss that. So, but friendship and community service, I don't think I have that friendship with my kid. I don't think we are friends. I don't know if because they are boys, but I think we have that parent child relation, but no friendship as a as that sense where they share what's going on with them and what's the thinking of. We don't have that. I think we miss that. I miss that. But the reading and the bedtime, the talking, the play, I did play a lot with the first one, but not with the little one. Okay, and I will stop there. That was a great presentation. Thank you, Shura.
Thank you.
Thank you, Collins. Exactly 3 minutes, which is on time.
Okay.
Thank you for taking care of that. And another person, our vice, Christelle and Steve and beyond to be very, very on top of this subject because it's something that they still have time to practice.
And Shurel too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
If I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
okay. So, thank you very much, Shirel, for this wonderful presentation. I didn't have time to finish the book, but I found it very, very, very interesting. Now, my first point is I noticed that there are many of the advice apply to us as well. Now, even though we are grown up, they are not, they do not appear to be too off, apart from certain techniques that are applied to raising child up from, you know, level of unconscious to learning how to behave, how to communicate. Almost all the other emotional control, emotional intelligence that has been taught in the book seem to be applied to us. And one thing that I really learned and that I wish I knew was the open ended questioning techniques. It could have helped a lot, but I realized that it should also be used now, even when communicating with peers, instead of throwing questions out with a why or with a what that will require a just sharp and yes or no answer. And that will, especially when there are emotion already involved, avoiding questions that will require yes, no, or any sharp answer will help the communication. And that is what I realize is very important that I could use in this book. And thanks to Chirel, as he opened it throughout to the end of the book, the teaching techniques, the exchange, especially I knew that one trying to uh, do it as apple to apple. Don't punish, for example, a child by preventing him from getting dinner. Dinner will be escaped as you behave like this. Then he will say, okay, let me just destroy it altogether since I'm not going to have dinner, and so on. But making open it up to the child to want to do what you want him to do now, to expect something rather than preventing the person from getting something. So that key thing, when you want to, it's a matter of negotiating, I think, with the child by showing him the advantage of what you, the parent, you are telling him to do, and by taking advantage and offering him something in exchange that will excite the child to want to do things. And also understanding the emotion of the child by helping, asking questions, making it open until the child open up to you so that you can see the answer in what the child is bringing up rather than going straight to the your viewpoint, and also rather than making a decision and say execute and move on. It's a little complex, but I learned a lot from it, I should say. And even if it is not directly to apply to a child or to apply to myself, and seeing how to handle or grow emotionally seems to be very important as a book. That's what I have taken. Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Charlie.
No problem.
We need to send Charlie to Beyond School so that he can address it.
How many minutes did I do? 4 or 5?
No, 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 it wasn't too bad. It was just two
Ah, okay.
minutes extra. All right. Another person?
Let me
Okay.
intervene. So, thank you, Shrel, for the presentation. It's the opposite of Beyond's presentation, and you went through all of the points. If anyone didn't get a chance to read it, they get a chance though to learn more about it. So, thanks for the explanation. Um, Answering the question from Nasif, is the answer is linked to the historical pattern, the culture, because the way each culture raise the kid is different, right? African, Asian, European, right? Talking about emotion is more on Western society, right? In African society, there is no emotion and there is no negotiation. They tell you what you got to do, right? Maybe so many kids in the family they can tell you, hey, if you don't do it, you will die, and nobody will realize. It's so many kids around here. They say stuff like that, right? And they just, but it's not true in this Western society. But in any society, our kid should not be our friend. That's me thinking. Your job is to raise them because you have to give them direction, right? To do more than what you did yourself and give them the path. This is the right way. But if you start thinking about like friendship is you do everything together. The kid has to reach some age before you become really a friend, if we want to tell that way. That's my thinking though. And so many times they get grade, I pick them from school, they don't say anything. It's only when they get home, they tell their mom, right? But I'm used to it. But
Because mom jump.
yeah, because the rule has to be the rule. So many stuff we learn here, that's true, but it doesn't completely apply because also I don't know if it's true, but you see, in some of the Western society, they have like more of like talking about depression, anxiety, some other stuff that in the older world people don't have, right? So everything has the yin and yang. So I take it that way. Now, so clearly, I'm not like Shari yet. So and the timing. So clearly, to answer your question, the one I feel right is to guide the kid and tell them what to do and show them if you do this, this is what's gonna happen. We do this, these are the things are gonna happen, and you show them. But and later, you don't close the door. The door's still open. They can still talk to you, but you have to be firm about this is where we are going, and that's what parenting, the most difficult job in the world, is about. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you
Can
very
I
much.
add one thing?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I add one thing? 1 minute?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes. So out of what I think, why we were raising our kid, I think we punish more the the bad behavior than rewarding the good behavior. And that's what we learn from our parents, right? When you do something bad, they punish you. And that's what
Gafa
we
kemo
kind of
bien setani sise.
replicate, right? So that's one thing, I think, probably if I have to start over, I'll probably change and see what will be the result. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That's totally true.
Yeah.
We'll call Christelle.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
I can go briefly.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Cheryl, for the wonderful presentation, great presentation. Um, the book, I actually ordered a hard copy for me because I think I may be referencing it in the future. Um, the book to me, um, I think it's so different than the way we are being raised in Africa, the way we think about parenting and how to do things. It's just different, and it's a new way to adapt to one person to. But my takeaway is the first, the I think it was the second or the third chapter is knowing yourself. Because when you're trying to educate a kid, you have to know yourself too. You have to know yourself first. Because with that, it helps you also identify some I'm not going to say necessary weaknesses, but it helps you understand yourself and what you can be prone to or against to, and what is the right thing. Because we all have our mindset, how to do things that may not be right for the kids. Or if we have to take that trend with them, we may fall apart. So I think I really resonate with knowing yourself as a person first, knowing what are your weaknesses, or what kind of mindset you already have that may kind of be on the way to really giving the right education to the kids. It's gonna be a wonderful book for us to reference in the future, because it's true, there's no one way to raise a child, but there is some stuff that you have to start doing at an early age. Steve and I, we were looking at there's Barack and Michelle, they were doing a podcast on his brother. I think, what's his brother's name? I can't remember. Something Robinson. But the brother has a podcast, I think, with Michelle, and they invited Barack to it. And they were talking how they really, from the get go, how they raised the kids, how Barack had to be really involved from the first day, and how that really helped the relationship with the girls. It was a very we listened to the whole documentation in the night. It's a really good thing to understand that you have to be involved from the get go, and you have to, even by the age they said 2 or 3, you have to be able to say no to the kids, because kids, they learn very very fast, and if you don't set the limits early, they will go out of bounds very, very easily. So those were my two takeaways. Knowing myself, and then setting boundary early. And that doesn't mean you don't have you have to find the right balance with that parenting. It's not easy, but books like this help us to kind of stay on the guide of how to best do things. So it's a wonderful reference, and thank you, Cheryl, and thank you all for your contributions tonight.
Thank you for
Thank you,
Christian.
Krista.
Thank
Christelle.
you,
Thank
Christian.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lord. And as she is advising, we had to know ourselves before we can lead other people. We had to try to increase our knowledge, what we are doing right now. Because if you don't know yourself, how are you going to be emotionally stable to lead other kids or other people in your life? So it's very, very important. Thank you, Christelle. And we still have Bignon and Steve. Bignon, you want to go?
Beyond.
Okay. First, I want to thank Shrell for the great presentation. And what learned from the book is you have to be patient and adaptable with your child if you want them to grow up into to a young respect. If you want them to grow up into a respectable adult.
Yep.
And also something about me. Back when I was a young teen, when I was directly told to do something, it was I find it a lot less fun, and and so I usually procrastinated
Mm-hmm.
until it was the last minute.
Okay. You
All right.
waited at the last minute before you do your work.
Yeah,
Okay.
All right. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you, Beyond. Thank
Thank
you,
Thank
you, Beyond.
you.
Yeah. Even
for
if
being.
adults also procrastinate, but
Yeah,
the
that's what I
goal
want to
is
say.
the
Yeah.
job has to be done, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You
I do
know,
Yeah.
everyone,
procrastinate a lot too,
everyone,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Thank you
but
to be frank with everyone here, but I can tell you that procrastination is a human being. I mean, bad side,
Dilemma,
yeah.
yeah.
especially is when something that you feel you just said it that is you don't feel it fun, then you start procrastinating
Really.
because you might have your homework there, but a friend might come and say, "Oh, can we play a game?" And you say, "Oh, game is more fun. Let leave
Let's play game.
the homework and do the game first." So yeah, you had to be focused and trying to be consistent to avoid procrastination. Otherwise, it's so common in
Okay. All
in a
right.
human
Yeah,
being.
so yeah, beyond but maybe I'll tell you this story 30 second quick. When we were
Hmm.
little, the parent they'll ask us to, the sometimes you have rice or you have corns or you have beans, and there was some like little stone in them. And then the parent not home, they ask you to sort it out and remove all of the stone, you go through it, and you can have the corn to the mill, and then you procrastinate, you play, and you do stuff until it's 11:50, and that's when you start picking, and then you bring it over there. At noon, the food is not ready, and they'll beat you, right? But it's not true here. But that's what we've been through. So we do stuff like that too.
Yeah, yeah.
The same
All
thing.
right, thank you, Bjorn. And the last person is Steve, and let's hear.
Uh, no, no. Hi everyone.
I
Hi,
say
Steve.
Yes, so I'm so I'm so happy. Thank you, Cheryl, for the great presentation again. I'll just I'll just say, uh, I mean, based on what Fred Thomas said, my mindset is a little bit aligned with that way of looking at things, right? So, I'm coming from a very strict family with the dads, being the dad, giving the direction, but at the same time playing the dad, the dad role, guiding us and helping us to understand things, and as we were growing. So that's how I look at things. It's very different than how children. I see a lot of differences here in the United States, how children are educated and all that. So I uh, I usually say, if you have a formula that works, there is no need to change. There's no need to change that formula, right? Or you can just correct a little bit or improve the formula. But if the formula works, it's just it's just better to keep that formula and go with it. So, like I used to tell Priscilla and myself, we usually speak, and I usually tell her, what, I'm just gonna be a very, I don't want to say a very strict dad or parent, but parent, but I want to do the same thing my dad was doing, but at the same time balance, because we're not in Africa, so this is another society with a lot of differences. So just balance and try to give the best you can give to the children as a parent. At the same time, playing your role, not being too friendly with them, because as soon as you become their friend, there is no respect anymore. There is a lot of confusion, a lot of things that will be mixed up, and so yeah, I mean, it's just yeah, that's how I look at it, and a lot of flexibility, right? We have to know ourselves, like Chriselle said, and know what you can do, know how far you can go, and just especially if you the way if as you're educating those children, your two parent, right? Because sometimes you have only one a single parent that is doing the job. It's not very easy. But if you're doing it, with your wife, or the wife with your husband, you have to complete. You have to put yourself together to make it work, basically. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add. And thank you for all your contributions as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you a lot. And me, I'll quickly summarize what I was thinking while everyone was talking. We have to be careful as well, because it's not that it's one technique or one rule that can fit all our children or all everyone who are in our entourage. Because you might be doing something to John, and John, your son, will react differently than maybe Jane, what you are doing. And you see a parent, especially in Africa, that are very, very strict, and then one daughter or one son will say, "Oh, I don't want to do that to my children. I will give them a laissez faire. They will do whatever they want." And the same other sister or brother will say, "Oh, I love that technique that our dad was using on us, and I want to replicate that with my children." And then he will pass the same uh, raising technique on those people. So it's depend. We are so different. We are emotional animals. So it's not that 1 plus 1 equal 2 in all the cases. So it's different. While we are using the technique, we had to have a feedback to see whether the technique is working on our children, or maybe it's working on the first child, but it's not working on the second child. So we had to come up with another idea. That's why he's advising us that we had to increase our knowledge as well, trying to adapt to your children to see whether what you are doing is the perfect solution. On that, I think this book as well was advising us to go and look for that book. I don't know if anyone suggests that book, but I might put it in Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goldman. He's he's like the fatherhood in that emotional technique, emotional intelligence technique. So
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
one that I sent.
yeah, I would
yeah.
suggest.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the question is mainly for Fred, Charlemagne,
Mm,
Arun, and Fred Thomas, right?
mm-hmm,
And I mean, and Tata Column. So tell me, what do you think? Since we're talking about this book, right? What do you think about? Because few weeks ago, Crystal and myself, we had a discussion about the orientation, right? When it
mm,
comes to the the choice
mm-hmm,
for for children about
mm,
what they want to do
mm,
in like the career, right?
mm,
So you know how back home, your parent will say, "Hey, you know what? There is no, you don't have to think too much. This is what we want you to do because we know that this path is gonna set you for success, right?
mm.
Because probably they have some connections, they have some friends that are already, they know some people around, so that if you do whatever they're telling you, when you finish your school or your training, they can call someone and just expedite your process to enter to the job market and stuff like that. So what do you think? Do you think, because here is like, okay, your child will just come one day and say, okay, I want to be a musician. I want to be like, I want to dance. I want to do something. I mean, something that you'll be like, I don't know if that's the right choice, because all of us here, we want to see our children being a doctor, being a, I don't know, something that is very, very famous, in our society, right? Like, we like big names. So how do you balance that? Do you let them decide what they want to do and just encourage them on that path, or do you influence the choice from the get-go? Like, I don't know what age is that, but how do you manage that? Thank you.
I'll let those who are more experienced than me to go ahead first. I single out Charlie and Thomas, and then I'll finalize it.
Hmm. So let me say a few words. A few words will be my first answer. Is kind of a paradigm raising kid. Okay. Um, from my experience for being a child of someone, and also for have raising Shirel and beyond, and Shirel is graduate working and beyond soon. First, I would say each child is unique.
Mm-hmm.
Each child is unique. The role, the job of the parent is to be the provider and to be the guides, right? But the person who really educate the kid are the kid themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's some of my big takeaway. If I look at myself and my brother, the person that I follow, and if I look at Shirel and beyond, I know each person is just different. So in some society, taking Africa, if you want to be an artist and you make picture, the life in Africa is to tell you that you won't make a living from that. So art doesn't pay the bill in Africa. But the same art, when you come to the US or you go to Europe or you go to Japan, it might pay the bill, right? If you want to learn how to play music or how to play a tool or swim, anything in Africa, the parent will do everything to tell you you have to go and finish high school, get the baccalaureate, and then after that, if you do what they ask you, and you still want to do what you want to do, then you go and do it. That's the way we were raised. But here, they do talent and they can sort out what the kids want and stuff like that. So again, as long as we can talk, we'll give education, provide education, guidance. But don't forget, when the kids are at school, they have information from teacher, they have information from their friends, and all of those things will make the person that they will become. So we're not completely in control. With just the support for them. That's my experience, right? Because sometimes the kid talk and you don't remember that you told them any of this stuff. Where did they learn it, right? So that's what I'm gonna say to stop right now. Maybe Colum want to complete anything, but the kid, they're their own educator. That's what I will say. You try your best, but they will
Okay.
become what they want to become.
That is true.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Because when I take my example, my parents were teachers, and they want all of us to be teacher and work for the government back home, all of that. So all my brothers and sisters are teachers, right? But my parents had school, and when I was in university, I went one day to help them control the kid one morning, and I came back home. I told my mom, I don't want to be a teacher. So, and she's like, why are you going to? I'm like, I don't want to be a teacher. I want to do something medical. And anyway, she guided me. She's like, okay, go find a school that you want to go to. And she paid for my school. So I tried her stuff, but she noticed I didn't like it. But she guided me to do what I wanted. Right. So yeah, it's in this area we are not going to impose what we want on the kid. We are going to guide them and give them the pros and cons, and see uh, and go with their choice and support them out of it. That's what I'm thinking.
And Charlie, do you
Okay.
have anything
Thank
to add?
you.
Yes, I was listening to Steve, and then unfortunately a call came in, and I missed the end of the question. If he could summarize it in a few seconds, I will I will give my opinion.
So I don't want I don't know if Steve is ready, but if I could
Or
summarize,
you could.
is
Mhm.
how
Yeah.
can you
Yes,
guide?
Farron, go ahead.
Oh, okay, how can you guide your son or your children to choose a career in nowadays, especially in Africa, where the parents have, if the parents say something, we cannot cross it. We do what they have to. But in this environment, how can you guide them? How can you make a choice for them? Or how can you actually guide them to make a choice as a career?
Okay, you can come in first, and I'll come in last.
No, okay. Okay. And me, definitely, I understand what is Steve's, how should I say, anxious. He's a little anxious whether he could let that go with his future children and all this. But what I could say, in my view, I was lucky that none of my parents forced me to do any career, especially my mom. She didn't even know what to choose for me. So it was those who were more advanced at university level that she would say, "Oh, please guide my son for me. I don't know anything. I haven't been to college, blah blah blah." And then uh, I end up being an accountant, which I didn't regret it at all. So what I would advise Steve in this case is it has to be like a Venn diagram. I don't know if I pronounce it the word correctly, but is what they want. Are they going to make money? and what is the future. So you work with them with those three objectives, and then you pick the careers or the jobs that are in the intersection of these three. So what do they want? Do they want, because you might want to force them to be a nurse, and the person might say, "Oh, I don't like to see a blood." That's a mistake there. So what do they want? Are they going to make money? Because I mean, you can make money in anything, but is there any future in that? And the third one is there any future? Because if someone comes now and say, "I want to start writing as a writer," I will tell that person, if it's my son, that you cannot go there